And welcome to the winter and spring edition of Krown Countdown U and the new edition of Krown Canada West Countdown U. Yes, there's been a few changes, so let's take you through them. We have teamed up with our conference partner, the Canada West, to bring you all the highlights from basketball and hockey, from the conference play all the way through to the national championships. In addition, we will still give you national coverage of the CIS football scene throughout the winter. If you are just a fan of one of the sports, you'll be able to catch any of our segments on YouTube. But now we will tell you about the worst kept secret in the CIS. That is the Vanier Cup going to Tim Hortons Field in Hamilton for the next 2 years. The CIS made the announcement on Monday.
The Vanier Cup has a great history, and the success in the past 5 years alone in Montreal and in Vancouver and in Laval with the University of Laval. This is a great platform. And I remember the first time I came to the stadium here and how impressed I was when I did the first tour, what a wonderful facility you have in the city. It was when I came here, I knew that with all the successes the Vanier has had as it's grown over the years, this was the next step in terms of presenting the Vanier Cup across Canada.
Meanwhile, in Regina, the Mike Gibson era will be known as the Mike Gibson error, after the former Rams coach resigned after just one 0-8 season at the helm of the Horns. Gibson has taken an assistant's job with the Edmonton Eskimos to coordinate their run game and offensive line. The board of directors of the Rams are now in scramble mode to find a successor. The board has indicated they will go on another national search for a coach, but sources close to the organization say the team may opt for an interim boss for 2016. Gibson addressed the media Monday in Regina.
To be quite honest with you, this was a very tough decision for myself and my family. I always tell the players this, and I thoroughly believe it, that this is their football team. It's not the head coach's football team. Better opportunity. I mean, I'm going to a place with a young head coach, a guy that, to be quite honest with you, before the phone rang, I didn't know. I've gotten to know him in our conversations. I think he's dynamic.
There has been no shortage of news surrounding the Vanier Cup champion UBC Thunderbirds during the offseason. Earlier, head coach and director of football operations Blake Nill stopped by. Now joined by Vanier Cup champion head coach Blake Nill of the UBC Thunderbirds. Blake, it's great to be a champion. You didn't bring the trophy in with you, but we have it on the wall there for you. Yeah. I think one of the biggest minuses from being a Vanier Cup champion is that you get a late start at recruiting and you end up having to play catch up by 2, 3, even 4 weeks. Do you feel like you've caught up yet?
Not yet, and you want to know something, that's an accurate statement. I remember back in the St. Mary's Vanier Cup runs we had at St. Mary's, recruiting didn't even start till January. You know, when you had January, February to catch up, to identify, and then March, April, May, and all the way until training camp to sign kids. Literally right now, most teams have identified everyone and then are in the final stages of closing everyone. So we've been scrambling quite a bit right from moment one just to get caught up and make sure that we're getting the opportunities at the quality of players we want.
Now, the challenges that you have with recruiting are many, even though you've got a defending championship team. What sticks out to me, offensive line, maybe a bit of defensive line too. Running back, even though you've had some good athletes in the mix that you might be able to bring back over from defense, and you lose Quinn Van Gilswyk. But I believe you have an answer, a kicker, don't you?
Yeah, you know, specifically, I would say the biggest areas of concern for us are our offensive line, which is always a concern of mine. Secondary, I think we need to improve the athletic component of our secondary. We're able, I should say, to bring in a fairly touted recruit in Greg Hutchins, who I think will give us an answer to the vacancy left by Quinn. And we've had some good athletes recruited into the program at tailback. And I don't think we're going to have to make moves from positional moves, primarily Blackwell to back to tailback. I think we have the athletes who can come in and fill the running back role the way it is right now.
Before I let you go, what do you think the biggest challenge is facing CIS football heading into the 2016 season?
You know, again, I continually look at the fact that we've got to make sure, you know, this is a bias, but I'm a big advocate to protect the AUS, okay? And you know that. You know, we've had this talk 100 times, and I think that the history of Atlantic Canada, the CIS needs to make sure that Atlantic Canada is looked after, that the AUS, we got to work hard to keep it competitive, to keep it relevant. There's, you know, how many jobs? 10 to 12 full-time jobs there. Opportunities to play in some tremendous environments, and I don't like all the notion of, you know, this new playoff format that limits Atlantic Canada. Whatever. I want to fight hard for Atlantic Canada. I have a bias. You know, that's where I got my start. I believe you can have success in Atlantic Canada. We need to protect it, and that's something that I'll speak openly about and candidly for that matter.
You can see the entirety of the interview with Coach Nill on our YouTube channel or on the Canada West site. When we come back, the story in hockey. Stick around. Krown Produce secures produce locally and from around the world for Canadian retailers. Krown Produce is also proud to secure sponsorship of University football on Shaw. Krown Produce, supporting Canadian retailers and Canadian amateur football. Welcome back, everyone. The best matchup in all of the Canada West this weekend was in women's hockey, where one met two as the Alberta Pandas traveled to the coast to meet the UBC Thunderbirds. We picked this up midway through the first period. UBC on the attack. Lindsay Post makes the kick save. UBC T-Birds win the battle on the sideboards. Hanit Pahar throws it on goal. Post pokes it out right on the tape of Melissa Goodwin. She buries it for her second of the season. 1-blank UBC. Second period, UBC scores 4:10 into the frame to make it 2-0. 40 seconds later, Rebecca Unrau watches two Pandas collide, undresses the Alberta defenseman and slides it past post. It's 3-blank Birds. Sheila Toney added this empty netter late in the third. Danielle Dubé stops 25 shots to earn her second shutout as UBC takes this one 4-0. With the win, the Birds sit just 2 points behind the Pandas for tops in the conference. Game two between these two saw more of the same. Less than 4 minutes into the first, UBC with the dump in. Pahar beats her defender to the puck, chips it back to the point. Kirsten Toth with the slap pass to Logan Boyd, and Boyd buries it to the back of the net. One bagel for the Birds. Second period now, the UBC defenseman can't hold the puck in the zone, and the foot race ensues. Alex Poznikov wins it, wires a blast, and Dubé kicks it aside. But Janelle Frower is there to clean up the mess. Pandas finally solve Dubé. We got a 1-1 affair. Third period brought nothing. To 3-on-3 OT we go, and the Birds finish it on the rush. Boyd gets behind the defenseman, receives a dandy pass and an even better dangle. UBC takes it 2-1 in overtime. The win was the Birds' third straight and ties them with Alberta for 35 points atop the conference standings. Manitoba at Mount Royal. Tied at ones to start the third. Lindsay Blight picks up the loose puck and fires a softie on goal. It slips by Jess Ross. Oh, doctor, that's a stinker. On the other end of the pond, Rachel Dick was standing tall for the Bisons, robbing the Cougars' relentless attack. Under 2 minutes to go, Bisons moving the puck around. Alexandria Anderson's shot from the point somehow finds its way into the back of the net. Bisons add an empty netter, scoring 3 in the third, taking down the Cougars 4-1. Mount Royal's special teams went 0 for 6 on the power play in the loss. Game two, straight to the second frame. Cougars on the power play. Shot from the point gets blocked. Scramble in front results in a goal for Sarah Weninger. And we're knotted at ones. Third period. Bison's up 3-2. Rachel Pitts with a nice feed to a streaking Megan Carver. She buries it. That ties it at 3s. Overtime didn't end this one. Off to the shootout we go, where Wenninger needed to score to give the Cougars the win. She goes Ruth Daddy on Dick, and the Cougars win 4-3 in a shootout. With the win, Mount Royal snaps a 2-game losing streak. Calgary Saskey from Cowtown, Game 1. Huskies down 2-1. Julia Flinton's blast from the point gets tipped in by Lauren Zeri. That ties it at 2. But 37 seconds later, Ia Gavrilova flashes her hands. It just about falls before putting it in the back of the net. Dinos take the first one 4-2. Game 2, Sasha Vathina scored her 11th of the season. 3 minutes into overtime, Dinos take it 2-1 in the OT. Emma Waldenberger scored at 16:51 of the first, and Tony Ross stopped all 30 as the Cougars took the first game 1-0. While in the second game, Waldenberger opened up the scoring just 40 seconds into the game as Regina wins 4-2, taking the pair over Lethbridge. As mentioned earlier, UBC now in a share of the top spot in the conference with Alberta, while the Cougars are red hot over their last 10 games. Here are the games coming up this weekend in Canada West women's hockey. Coming up, the boys take over the ice. Krown Produce secures produce locally and from around the world for Canadian retailers. Krown Produce is also proud to secure sponsorship of University football on Shaw. Krown Produce, supporting Canadian retailers and Canadian amateur football. Now time for hockey on the men's side. And while the Mount Royal Cougars could be guilty of looking ahead to this week's Crowchild Classic at the Saddle Dome, they had some business to take care of with the Bisons. Pick things up in the second period. Cougars up 1-0. The rebound comes out in front, and Matthew Brown deposits it in behind Bison's goalie Justin Pollock. The Cougars edge the Bisons in the first one, taking it 3-2. In the second game, Bison's down 1-0 until late in the frame. Jordan DePape evens things up, scoring his conference-leading 12th goal of the season. But 32 seconds later, Tanner Olstad responds for the Cougars. They had an empty netter in the third, and 3-1 is your final. Mount Royal takes both games and are now riding a 4-game winning streak after the weekend wins over UBC and now Manitoba in consecutive weeks. T-Birds and the Golden Bears in the second frame. Alberta down 2-1. They show off some nifty passing. That results in a Brett Ferguson tally. UBC retakes the lead, but in the dying seconds of the period, Stefan Legault finds the cross-ice seam right over to Thomas Carr, who buries it behind Eric Williams. It's 3-3 going into the third. But then the Cruz Reddick show begins. Reddick scores 3 in the period, earning the natural Hattie. G-Bears take the first one 6-3. Alberta's 2-game losing streak comes to a halt. Could they make it 2 in a row? So to Saturday's action we go. 1-0 T-Birds in the third, and on a power play, Nick Bonacisi fires it towards the goal where Jesse Hilton puts it away. 2-blank Birds. Less than a minute later, Golden Bears cut the lead in half. Dustin Brado drops it for Riley Kaiser. He gets denied, but the puck finds its way to Brado's stick. He puts it behind Matt Hewitt. Alberta tied it up to send it to the OT, where it came down to a shootout. Scott McDonald scored first for the visitors, and it came down to Reddick to keep the game alive, but he's stopped by Hewitt. UBC earns the split, taking this one 3-2 in a shootout. A huge 2 points for the T-Birds keeps them a single point above Manitoba for fourth place in the standings. Calgary at Saskatchewan. Game 1 was close, but Game 2, well, not so much. Cameron Blair scoring here in the third made it 7-3 Huskies. They go on to take both contests. So with both wins, Saskey improves its winning streak to 5 games. Lethbridge got 2 goals from Brandon Close as the Pronghorns got past the Cougars 6-4 in the first game. But in the second tilt, Dylan McCombie and Zach McPhee both scored twice as the Cougars get the split, taking this one 6-3. Saskatchewan continues to separate themselves from the pack, while Mount Royal's hot play of late has them evened up with the G-Bears. And here are your games coming up in Canada West men's hockey. It's become the biggest event on the Canada West calendar this side of football season. It's the Crowchild Classic. With more, let's hit the campus corner.
The Crowchild Classic. The Crosstown Smackdown sees the University of Calgary Dinos taking on the Mount Royal University Cougars at the Scotiabank Saddledome in Calgary. This season marks the 4th year for the Classic, which continues to break CIS attendance records. Dinos Assistant Athletic Director Ben Matchett explains how this event came about.
Bill joined Canada West in 2012. We started to look at what opportunities we'd have around kind of creating that in-town rivalry. We knew we had an opportunity there, and so we created the Crowchild Classic series, which takes all the games that we play in regular season action against each other in soccer, basketball, volleyball, and hockey, and puts them together, and that's kind of the season-long championship. But the Flames approached us with this actually in late December of 2012, with the idea of kind of having the finale of this as a doubleheader in hockey at the Saddledome. And
the Crowchild Classic is a huge event for not only both athletic departments, but also for the fans and the players.
For the rest of our student athletes, it happens midweek, so it's an opportunity for a lot of them to come out and see games that they might not necessarily otherwise be able to when they're playing on a Friday and Saturday night. So they get to be there on a Thursday. They get to be part of the whole atmosphere with the Dinos versus the Cougars in the stands, and you see student athletes from both teams kind of from both schools kind of getting into it as well. So it's just a really awesome event on both sides.
So what's on the line for the Classic?
The winner of the Crowchild Classic every year gets the medal, which is a 68-kilogram cast iron City of Calgary manhole that says sewer on it. It's probably the only trophy in all of sport that has the word sewer emblazoned right there on it.
Mount Royal's head coach Bert Gilling talks about what this event does for the athletes and how the Classic gives Calgary a taste of how great the Canada West Conference is in their own backyard.
You know, the game's still the game. It's a crosstown rivalry, but it's just that I think that feeling of going into that rink, stepping onto that ice, you know, the hair on the back of your neck is standing up, and for our student athletes here, where it's such a challenge to get fans to come out and watch. It's such a good product. It's a chance to showcase our sport and our programs and let people know how good the hockey really is here. Not only in the city of Calgary with our 2 programs, but in Canada West and in CIS. It's a real showcase for our athletes, and they take full advantage of that.
Having watched the Classic grow, Cougars captain Matt Brown knows firsthand what this experience is like.
I think it's pretty amazing. It's hard to predict what it'll be like this year, but it's grown every year, so everyone you talk to, everyone's always asking when the Dome game is, when is it, so yeah, I think it should be even more interesting this year. It's tough to say, but we're expecting a bigger crowd, and it just keeps getting better every year, I find.
Dinos assistant captain Heather Burzens explains why the Crowchild Classic is about more than just hockey.
All the athletes really like to come out and support when we're playing Mount Royal, and it's a really big game, obviously, because of the Crowchild Classic as a whole, and if one athletics team win, then we all kind of come together and try to win the whole Crowchild Classic, so it's a really important game for all the athletes to come out to.
The manhole's on the line for the Classic, but for the athletes, there's a little bit more.
There's a lot of pride on the line, definitely, for this game.
And it's the one game of the year where, you know, it kind of set the record for the whole CIS, and everyone really wants to bring their A game and put on for their school, so it's pretty special that way.
Having broken 2 previous CIS records with 8,882 fans in 2015, it's easy to understand why records keep getting broken as the hype for this Classic grows. For Campus Corner, I'm Kellyanne Roberts.
Coming up, we hit the hardwood for a little hoops action. Stick around. Krown Produce secures produce locally and from around the world for Canadian retailers. Krown Produce is also proud to secure sponsorship of University football on Shaw. Krown Produce, supporting Canadian retailers and Canadian amateur football. Thanks for sticking around. The UBC Thunderbirds once again find themselves in the role of the Great Western Hope in men's basketball. Always competitive at the top of the standings. They have found ways to falter late in the season, either in the stretch run or at the Nationals over the last dozen years. They took the conference lead with them into Manitoba to face the Herd. Let's head right to the fourth Q. 7:26 to go, and this layup from Keith O'Mara puts the Bisons up by 15. But the T-Birds go on a run. Here's Jordan Jensen-White to Connor Morgan, who throws down the big one-hander. Then it's Jensen-White going to the rack for two. That cuts the lead to 8. Morgan then puts down the hammer to cut the lead to 6. Make that 4. A.J. Holloway in the open court. Boom, shakalaka. 1 minute to go, and Morgan does it again. Nails the jumper and gets the harm. He'll make the free throw to cut the lead to 2, 66-62. Holloway with the lay-in. That brings UBC back within 2. With just 12 seconds to go, the T-Birds foul Anders, misses both from the stripe. Morgan gets away with what looks to be goaltending, turns it over, but Jonathan Alexander also misses both from the stripe. One last chance for UBC, but Jensen-White can't connect from half court. This one's over, and despite the fourth quarter comeback, the T-Birds fall short, losing this one by 2. Game 2 saw a much different Thunderbird squad, up 8 with the final seconds ticking away in the first Q. Jensen-White hits this 3 at the buzzer to grow UBC's lead to 11 after 1. Philip Jalapur led the way for the T-Birds in this one, finishing with a game-high 19 points, as this one was UBC's from start to finish. Victoria on the road in Alberta. The G-Bears jumped out to a 14-point lead after the first and didn't hold back. Mamadou Gaye scored a game-high 18 points, with Brody Clark supplying 11 in the 20-point win. With the win, the G-Bears improved their record back to 500. The second game, the Vikes were the ones who came out a-gunning. Grant Sitton scored 7 points in the first half and followed it up with 9 more in the second. Teammate Brandon Dunlop chipped in for 16 of his own. Victoria improves to 7-5 with the win. Calgary took to the road and went home with 2 W's, winning both games by 10 over Brandon. While Lethbridge and Saskatchewan split their games, with Huskies guard Sean Lathan hitting the game-winning three-pointer with 23 seconds left on the clock to seal the win for the hometown Green Dogs. Thompson Rivers outscored MacEwan by 20 points in the first half, en route to an easy 15-point win in Game 1. In the second game, the Wolfpack scored 24 points in the fourth Q to edge out a 71-69 win. UBCO and Mount Royal. Cameron Friesen scored 14 points in just 7 minutes of action, as the Heat got by the Cougars 79-63 in the first of 2, while the second game was all Mount Royal, as Brett Layton scored a team-high 19 points in the win. And lastly, Fraser Valley wins both games over UNBC. Standings time now, and in the Explorer division, it's Thompson Rivers on top with UFV alone in second. While in the Pioneer division, Calgary holds down the top spot, while UBC has Regina hot on the T-Birds' heels for that second spot. Over to women's basketball now, and the Explorer division is the junior cousin to the Pioneer division in Canada West. However, the top teams in the Explorer are now getting pretty competitive, and the most competitive series of all featured Thompson Rivers and MacEwan. Cassie Kelowna scored 8 of her team-high 17 points in the fourth quarter, as Thompson Rivers got past MacEwan by 14 to take the first of 2 with the Griffins. 4 of TRU's starters scored in double figures for the win. Second game was a much tighter affair, but the Wolfpack used a strong fourth quarter to squeeze out a win. UBC Okanagan shot an abysmal 27% from the field, yet managed a 4-point win over Mount Royal on Friday. Well, in the second game, Claire Elliott scored 16 points to lead the Heat to a 2-game sweep. It was a tale of two different games between UNBC and Fraser Valley. In the first one, the Timberwolves got the best of the Cascades, taking it by 16. But in the second game, the Cascades got revenge with a 27-point win. Kelsey Lund was on fire for the Dinos, scoring a team-high 18 points. Calgary gets by Brandon with ease, taking Game 1 by 24. The second game was a much tighter affair. Calgary trailed throughout the game until the fourth, where the Dinos outscored Brandon 25-12, earning the 5-point win. Vikes and Pandas. Alberta had 4 players in double digits as they got by the Vikes, taking the first of 2 by 22. The win improved Alberta to 8-1 on the season and brought their winning streak to 3 games. The second game wasn't even close as Megan Wickstrom scored a game-high 19 points, connecting on 3 of 4 from the land beyond, leading the Pandas to 8 win. So with the win, the Pandas' win streak extends to 4 games, making Alberta 10-1 on the season. The Thunderbirds got an incredible 38 points out of Kara Spotton, which was too shy of the UBC single-game record as the T-Birds got by the Bisons by 16. In the second tilt, fifth-year player Diana Lee scored a game-high 15 points as the T-Birds take the second one by 10, improving their record to 500. Sasky and Lethbridge, if you're squeamish, turn away from this one. Huskies had 4 starters in double figures as they laid a 46-point smackdown on the Pronghorns. The second game was much of the same from Sasky, as once again 4 starters in double digits. The Huskies remain unbeaten on the season. McEwen takes over top spot in the Explorer division at 9-3, 1 game ahead of TRU and UBC Okanagan. While in the Pioneer division, Sasky, as mentioned, remains unbeaten, with Alberta and Regina hot on their heels. And here are the games coming up for you in women's basketball. Well, that does it for us here at KCU. So for now, let's get out to the game.